Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines where my guest is Sid Gautreaux. He is the Sheriff of East Baton Rouge Parish. Sheriff Gautreaux is going to talk to us about the Great Flood of 2016. He's going to talk to us about all the trials and tribulations that he and his deputies saw and the way they saved lives. He's also going to talk to us about the great financial strain that this has put on the Sheriff's Department, how their tax revenues have gone significantly down, and he's not quite sure what he's going to do about it. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Sheriff Sid Gautreaux.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith, and I have a Legal Lines tip for you. Remember, knowledge is power. And I want you to know if you're injured, Louisiana law grants you a variety of claims to make sure you're fully compensated. It's generally chopped up into several categories, the first being general damages. That's going to compensate you for your mental and physical pain and suffering, your scarring, disability, functional limitations, your loss of enjoyment of life. Also, it will compensate your family, frankly, for your loss of affection. It's called loss of consortium claim. Next category is specific damages. Those would be, say, for example, past and future lost wages, past and future medical expenses. You also have a claim sometimes for what's called punishment damages or punitive damages, typically only available when you're injured by a drunk party. Finally, you're entitled to legal interest from the date you file your lawsuit until you're paid and court costs. So my Legal Lines tip to you from me, Locke Meredith, make sure you know what your claims are.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm pleased to have back on the show East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff Sid Gautreaux. Sid, let's dive in. It's great to see you again. And this, frankly, is a continuation of our previous show and talking about the great tragedies of 2016. Last show we were talking about the tragedies of the murders and wounding of our great law enforcement heroes. And now we're talking about the flood.
That's right.
Kind of a 1-2 punch we experienced in 2016. It was seemingly the worst flood I've ever seen statistically, 1 in 1,000 years.
Right.
Tell me what it was like for you
Well,
guys.
you know, the benchmark was the 83 flood.
That's right.
And I worked the 83 flood. And of course, there was a lot of people lost their homes in that. But what we saw in this flood this past summer, it was nowhere near the same thing. When you look at 62% of our parish, and in Livingston's case, there was over 80% of their parish was underwater. It was just unbelievable. And
it happened so fast.
Yeah, it happened so fast. And you know, the other floods that we've had to whatever magnitude in the 83 flood, the water naturally is going to move from north to south. It's finding its way out. And that's what they pretty much did in these others. But we had so much rain in such a short period of time. Like out there working, we would have water in an area within an hour that was dry just an hour before. Right. And not only was the water moving north and to south, it was moving east to west and vice versa. It was just going any way it could to try to get out. And the difference, I think, I mean, I don't care, you know, what water control structures we could add. You know, there's been a debate on whether or not the diversion
and all
come
that
out.
Stuff, yeah.
It certainly would have helped, but
I've read 25% maybe reduction in the waters.
But it wouldn't have. This would have still been a catastrophic once in 1,000-year flood. You just can't have that much water fall in that short a period of time and expect it to have a place to go.
I read 25 inches in Denham, 32 around Zachary, Baker, that stuff in 3 days.
In 3 days. And, you know, I think, in my personal opinion, is you look from 83 till now, and look how much our parish has changed. Look at the growth and development we've had in our parish.
A lot of concrete.
That's exactly right. Wherever they build, it's dirt and concrete. So all of those things are barriers to this water getting out. And I think that contributed as much as the rainfall amount to the catastrophic floods we had. But it was something that, I mean, it just happened overnight. I had actually was at a Delta waterfowl banquet with 3 other sheriffs over in West Baton Rouge that Thursday night. And when I left there, it started raining, and I mean, it was coming down in sheets. And then, of course, at 6 o'clock the next morning, my guys are calling me, Sheriff, you need to come on out here. We got some problems. And
well, let's talk about the problems.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. We had I think I've read 150,000 plus homes and businesses have flooded.
That's right.
You have hundreds of thousands of folks who have been displaced. Thousands were in shelters for weeks. And most of these people have no insurance.
Most of them had no insurance and no flood insurance. They weren't required to have flood insurance.
Right.
And in some cases, they had flood insurance initially, but they've lived there for 20 years and never had a flood, so they had wound up dropping their flood insurance. I told my wife after this though, I don't care if I'm living in the middle of the Mojave Desert,
That's
I'm going to
right.
have flood insurance.
I agree.
But
No-brainer
it was
now.
really, it affected everybody, and the flood waters consumed businesses and homes, and there again, it didn't discriminate.
No.
It was black. We had as many black homes and blacks involved with this flood as we did whites, and we had rich, poor. It didn't matter.
Yeah, every socioeconomic group got white. So talk to me about the rescue efforts. I know y'all had lots of great equipment that was utilized. 850 deputies, I think I've read, work at the Sheriff's Department.
Right.
Everybody was all hands on deck.
It was all hands on deck. It always is, and we have contingencies in place, and we certainly put those contingencies into place and started. We started immediately working double shifts. We called everybody in. We've got a maritime response team, and they know, they have rescue boats.
Interesting.
We have rescue vehicles that I'll talk about when we
Right.
come back and go from that. But we have high water rescue vehicles. We had two deuce and a halves, and two 5-ton trucks.
Well, I
I
saw two huge machines going up and
Yeah.
down Millerville because
Yeah.
that's where the office is that's flooded.
And I was able to immediately utilize the Louisiana Sheriff's statewide emergency task force. So I had resources that were brought to us from them by other agencies, and the chiefs of police did the same thing. So we had resources from all over the state that came to help us. I know Sheriff Arbuckle from DeSoto Parish came down, brought his people. I had people from all over. Ascension, of course, they had their own problems, but they sent some people up. I mean, I think at last count, we had something like 16 different sheriff's offices across the state respond to us with personnel and equipment.
And so not only did you have to rescue folks, and despite all those resources, didn't have enough, right? Because you had to have the Navy Cajun folks come in.
That's right.
It was an emergency situation. You can't be at 50,000 different places at the same time.
No way can you have enough in the situations like that. But I will say again that state, local officials worked so good together. It came together and worked together to address all these needs. And of course, it wasn't just us, and I know you're going to have him on a show as Jason Hard. Jason had his hands full.
Ascension was getting whacked.
Ascension, St. Helena had problems.
20 parishes in all, I think, were in the declaration.
But we could not have done it without everybody pooling their resources together, without private citizens, public and private. I had a private company that sent helicopters up here. We have a helicopter, but they sent them up here and worked with us for almost a week. I had them send up airboats and play, companies like that just said, hey, I'm sending you this, whatever you need, we got. So, it was a collaborative effort. It could have been a lot worse because honestly, Locke, having worked out there daylight and dark, working through all the floods and everything I saw, I thought the death toll would have been a lot higher.
And we lost 11 human beings.
11 souls got lost overall. And I thought we'd probably lose that many just here in East Baton Rouge Parish, but thank God we didn't.
And so once you had the rescue operation completed, although that took a number of days, did it not?
It took several days because the water just didn't get out.
And people were stranded, and so once you had the rescues underway, you implemented a curfew. Tell the folks why.
Well, we implemented the curfew because we had areas that weren't secure. We had people's homes that they just had to leave, and they left all their belongings in there, and some of the homes were involved in the water, some of them weren't. But we had a looting problem, and we knew we were going to have a looting problem.
And made arrests.
And we made some arrests. And we implemented that for two reasons: for people's protection and their property protection. And it was the right thing to do. I'm glad we did it.
All right, well, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My special guest, Sheriff Sid Gautreaux. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved, get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Again, pleased to have back on the show Sheriff Sid Gautreaux. Sid, let's dive back in. We're talking about the flood and what you had to do in the middle of the tragedy where you're rescuing folks and you're having to impose curfews to protect property and folks who couldn't be rescued for days at times. Right. So now you've gotten the folks at least protected. We lost 11 souls. But what's the next step? I mean, now we've got...
Well, it's a rebuilding process, and you know, unfortunately, it's going to take a long time. The people that were fortunate enough to have insurance seem to be in a recovery mode a lot quicker than those that are relying on the government to do it. You know, and from just my personal...
I'm sorry, but just what are the sources of monies that you're seeing on your side of the table in the sense of from a public official?
Well,
because I think federal, state, local...
FEMA came in, as you know, and just to back up a little bit and digress to tell you, you know, everybody was affected. We had 182 deputies that had water in their homes, that lost their homes. So,
and they're out there protecting everybody else and taking care of everybody else.
You know, they were still out there working. I mean, I saw guys when I was working after 2 days, I said, what are you doing here? Because I knew they'd lost everything. I said, Sheriff, my family's safe, I'm good. And they just, you know, that's the kind of employees we had. That's the kind of, that's public servants. And that goes on. But I talked to so many people, even some of my own, my son-in-law, for example, in Denham Springs. He lives by Jubilee Crossing, and they got a little subdivision there. It's all the same kind of homes, you know, just kind of like little mini townhouse things. They all had like a foot of water in them. Well, his neighbor had the same amount of water. They right next to each other. A FEMA guy comes in and he assesses the damage. He writes him a check for $7,000. Then my son-in-law, same damage. A different guy comes and says, doesn't write him a penny. Says you don't qualify because you can. It's livable.
Luck of the draw.
Yeah, I mean it's
luck of the draw.
That's right. So you know, all I can say about that with FEMA, and I can't say anything about what they're doing with my department because we lost. You know, we had manpower overtime. We lost 62 vehicles, and we're going to wind up getting most of that back, and I'm very thankful for that, being recruit that money. But you know, there's still too much bureaucracy in that agency. I worked through Katrina. I will say FEMA came here a lot quicker than last time. They came here with more people. But there's still too much red tape, still
too slow, and inefficient, and ineffective.
Too slow. You know, that's right. And so I still see people that are just, you know, you see it. You know, they're still out there. Their homes are not even begun to be repaired. There was a lot of things that we helped with, and outside in private industry, private people helped stripping out houses.
Right.
And
we
that
had
happened
churches
quick.
coming in from all
that's
over.
Right. That happened quick. But now the rebuilding has just been a long, drawn-out, slow process, and I think there's many different reasons for that. But it shouldn't be that way.
Well, we were talking that Congressman Garrett Graves has been in the forefront of this like crazy on the federal side of the coin, and he's worked along with our United States Senators Cassidy and Kennedy, and before Kennedy, David Vitter, and I know the governor's flown up there, and thank God President Trump came down before he was elected, and he's
Right.
dedicated to try and help us. But the bottom line is, as I understand it, we got maybe $450 million. That pretty much all went to the state to reimburse it for all the monies it spent rescuing folks and helping folks get back on their feet, just to shelter. And maybe there's, you know, hundreds of millions more coming, but it's going to take months before we get it. Are y'all getting any kind of money quickly, or are you guys still saying help?
No, we're not. We're still asking for help. I've gone to Washington twice and met with all of our delegation. I met with Congressman Richmond. I met with Garrett. I met with Cassidy, and just pleading our case for them to help us any way they can. And I know the focus on any money that's coming into the state is going to the homeowners, the citizens. I understand that, but I also understand this is having a devastating effect on the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office. That's what I'm speaking. And I don't know how we're going to recover.
It's so interesting, your perspective, because you're not getting any money, and everything I'm hearing on the private side is they're not getting any money.
Yeah.
We're hearing about how hundreds of millions of dollars are being sent to the state, but nobody's getting any money to tide people over during this tragedy.
Yeah.
How do we fix this?
I don't know, you know.
Because I know Garrett Graves and our federal delegation is busting their butts. I know you've been up there. Governor Edwards has gone up there.
I think there's just, you know, there again, what I saw early on, there was too much Republican, Democratic
animosity going
on that was bogging things down. In my perspective right now, I think they've pretty much gotten past that now. But, you know, it shouldn't be, there again, it shouldn't be whether it's Republican, Democrat, Independent, whoever. When American citizens are in need and are hurting, the government should be there to help them in these emergency situations. It shouldn't be political. It should be no politics.
It should be efficient and effective after all the tragedies that our nation has gone through.
Well, I personally feel that the governor and our delegation, our congressional delegation, is doing everything they can to try to help us, help East Baton Rouge Parish, help the sheriff's office, and they fully understand the dire needs that we're in, and how this could have such an adverse effect on the citizens of this parish from a law enforcement perspective. And I know we'll talk about that later.
Well, and I've read, you know, there's a lot of blame being passed around as to who's at fault for this developing in the first place. We were talking about how all the concrete, all the building has created maybe quicker overflow. The Comeet Diversion Canal has been talked about for 30 years.
And you know, I have flashback to Katrina. And when I worked at Katrina 8 days, I would take a contingency of law enforcement officers from all over the country, and we'd go work down in the 9th Ward. And of course, we'd come back at night at Lamar Dixon, and then we'd go back the next morning at daylight and work. And on the way back, I'd be listening to the radio show, talk shows, and all that. Or when I'd get back, I'd sit down with Sheriff Wiley, and we'd be looking at all the media coverage of it. And everybody was pointing fingers. You know, the American people don't want to hear that. No. They don't want to know. Because trust me, Katrina, there was plenty enough blame to go around for with everybody.
And the Army Corps finally fixed that.
Yeah, state, local, and federal. But the people don't want to hear that. All they want to know is, we're in dire need, we need help, send something, send us help. And that's all they deserve that. But you know, I still see some things in this disaster
that haven't
changed. And you know, I like I say, I got full confidence in our delegation. The gentleman I just talked to, because I met with him several times, I've had several phone conversations with him, met with the governor several times. The governor's going to do everything he can to help us. I think his focus right now is helping people and trying to get that money to the people as quickly as they can. The problem is the feds will say, all right, we're going to send y'all $500 million.
Put all kinds of strings on it.
But it takes all, you don't get it immediately, then they put all kind of, this is how you got to go about applying for it and getting it and dispersing it.
We'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith with Legal Lines. My guest, Sheriff Sid Gautreaux. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved, get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. Pleased to have back on the show Sheriff Sid Gautreaux. Let's dive back in, Sid. All right. You know, we've talked about how nobody has money, but you're still expected to do your job. And as Sheriff of East Baton Rouge Parish, in your jurisdiction is law enforcement for the entire parish.
That's right.
You've got how many employees?
I've got a little over 850 right now. We got 900 on the rolls, but I can't fill all those positions because of, well, money situations right now, but I've got over 850.
And you've got all kinds of equipment that you have to maintain.
Right.
You're still providing services for folks related to just the flood outside of the hats of providing safety for private individuals, the government, our courts, and even Homeland Security, just the whole daggum area. Tell the folks what you're still dealing with the flood.
By state law, as you know, the sheriff of each parish is the chief law enforcement officer for the parish, and the jurisdiction of the sheriff's office is throughout the parish, whether it's inside the city of Baton Rouge, Zachary, whatever. It's over the entire parish. And as such, the sheriff, I wear 3 hats. I got the civil office, I got the criminal office, and I have corrections, the jail, the prison. So it's a major operation. It affects so many people, and it affects law enforcement and criminal justice system tremendously. And they all have to be working together. What we're faced with, and is not so much, we get, like I told you earlier, we're getting reimbursed, and we're replacing equipment we
by
lost
the federal
and all
government.
that stuff. Federal government's doing that, and we're getting our money back on that. Where this is going to affect us now and in the long run, because I've had to go, I'm on a hiring freeze right now. I can't hire anybody because I don't know what the economical future holds for us. We're on a spending freeze, you know, and we're just at the bare bones.
Pinching every penny.
And let me explain to you why. The sheriff's office, we have right at a $75 million a year budget each year. The majority of that, 70% of it is salary or benefit related, which is in most businesses.
So you can't control that. That's a fixed expense.
That's
you got
fixed expense. The majority of our funding comes from one source: ad valorem tax, property tax. We don't get a penny from sales tax. We don't.
And that's unusual for sheriff departments?
Not really. The majority of us across the country, across the state, the majority of the sheriffs do not get any sales tax. There are some. That's one thing that Jason's fortunate enough to have.
Sheriff
Art. Jason Art in Livingston is when they started expanding with Bass Pro and what is it?
A lot of economic development out there, Jubin Crossing, all that stuff.
He has a half-cent sales tax that is dedicated to his office, so that helps him tremendously. But the vast majority of us only get any funding from property tax.
Wow.
Now we get a small amount from fees and related deals, but such as that, fines, fees, and so forth. But 72% of my budget comes from ad valorem tax. So let me put this in perspective.
Wow! So all the money that you get from the taxes, it's already spent on all the fixed expenses you have.
It's already spent. We formulate our budget every year, and we start off with our tax base, and then we look at historically where we've been and where we're going, and so forth. This is what puts us in such a precarious position. We stand to lose up to $7-8 million this next year out of our budget.
And how is that happening?
Because of the decrease in the property values.
Because of the flood.
Partly because of the flood. let me explain to you. This past year was a reassessment year. The tax assessor comes in and reassesses property values within the parish. We took back, when we formulated our budget, and this was before the flood, we looked back at the last 30 years of that assessments have taken place. The lowest assessment we had in property value in East Baton Rouge Parish was 5.8, almost 6%.
Meaning the property increased by 5 or 6%.
5.6% in value.
So your revenue is going to go up 5 or 6%.
Right. The highest projection we had over that 30-year period was a 12% increase.
Good year.
Good year. So what we did in formulating this budget, we said, all right, look, let's just stay on the low end. It's a reassessment. We don't know what the assessor's going to do. So let's go on the low end. Let's say he goes on the low end, which was a 6% increase. So we formulated our budget on that low end figure.
Assuming he was going to come back and say properties have increased by 6%.
Or in that neighborhood.
Right. So you know you got 6% more money.
What hurt us before the flood is he reassessed property value in East Baton Rouge Parish at only a 3.5% increase.
So you lost 2.5%.
So we lost 2.5%. We had to go back and revamp our budget then, before the flood. Now the flood hits.
Oh man.
So the people that weren't affected by the flood, they still have the 3.5% increase in their taxes. But the people that weren't, you know, he's reduced that dramatically, and that's where the loss of revenue is coming in. Now he's going to go back. Brian said he's going to go back next year, and it's going to go, everybody go back to that 3.5%. But in the meantime, I'm losing about $8 million, and how do I make that up? I just don't make it up. So if I can't come up with money from the federal government, from the state, to help me offset that loss of revenue.
What are you going to do?
You know, it gets down to, by the year 2018, I don't have any money.
Sid, you and I were talking about you needing more money just to provide the services to protect our community 35 years ago.
That's right. I mean, I can expend what fund balance we have, and I will, but I can't deficit spend. I mean, I cannot deficit spend, will not deficit spend. So at that point, and that's where I'll be in 2018 if nothing else happens. At that point, I'll have to do one of two things. I'll either have to cut back services, which I don't think we can afford to do for law enforcement and for the protection of our citizens, or I would have to go in front of the people and ask them for another tax proposal, property tax, just to maintain what we have.
And folks sure aren't in the mood of paying more taxes these days, going through what everybody's been through.
And that's the only choices that we have, and that's the.
If I recall correctly, the sheriff's department is not unionized. Is that right?
No, we don't have a union.
And we've already talked about how our deputies, if they're lucky, make $38,000 a year putting their life on the line.
Yeah.
So I've got to assume that their pension, these fixed expenses you're talking about that are pension related and all that, that's extremely reasonable pensions. This is not the stuff you read about where these guys are milking the hell out of municipalities and stuff with pension plans. That's not what we're dealing with here.
No, it's not. I mean, you know, I've got to be fiscally responsible. I got to try to provide as much benefits as I possibly can that we can afford within our budget to my employees. I got to pay them a salary.
Or you're going to lose them. They're either going to quit.
That's right.
Or go join somebody else.
But at the same time, I'm held fiscally responsible to the people that put me in office and the people in the parish. So I can't deficit spend. I can't do it by law. And like I said, I wouldn't do it. But if we don't recoup some of this money we're losing, I can keep taking away from our fund balance, but good business practice says you should keep 15% in reserve.
So you got a little buffer, but not much.
Not much. And if it doesn't change, I eat that up by 2018, and then
Sid, thank you very much for all your service and everything you've done through the horrible year. This is Locke, Meredith Legal Lines. My special guest, Sheriff Sid Gautreaux. Thank you for being with us.